Hi guys, so today we're moving on to the Chariot, and I think to understand the Chariot, or really what I'm speaking of with the Chariot, you're going to have to watch the other videos. So you're going to be moving through from the Fool all the way up to the Hierophant, the Lover's card of course, to understand the Chariot. The Chariot is the first of the 7, right? So every 7 it switches. There are 21 cards in the major arcana and 0 for the Fool, right? So we say there are 22 cards in the major arcana, but the Fool doesn't count. The Fool just flows through the entire thing. It has no place. The Fool is just the energy, the awareness, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. So the Chariot is the first, we can call it an initiatory card, and this is a card that represents the human being, your human consciousness, our human consciousness, and this consciousness being expressed through the personality. How? Let's dive into it. Okay guys, so woo! This is gonna get a little tricky, so follow me. Anyhow, let's start off with a Rider-Waite, and once again I am going to shift the focus so the card always stays in focus. And can you see? Can you see? There we go. There we go. Okay. So the Fool, the Chariot card. The Chariot card on the Rider-Waite is full of symbolism, and the symbolism applies to, of course, your inner self, right? So the cards are always depicting some aspect of your consciousness and how it functions, how it creates this reality. These 21 archetypes that we're going to be going through are universal to every single person and being that has an experience on this level, right? So might not even apply just to humanity, who knows? So the self is the master in you and me. That's what we can call it. We are not God, but we are the sons and daughters of the Most High, made in the image of God. So we meet here not as bodies, but as spirits. And we do have remarkable spirit. So the words receptivity and will are attributed to this key, possibly also one of the reasons that it was assigned to Cancer, not just because Cancer was the next, flow, but this receptivity, this ability to receive, but also this ability to protect yourself and draw boundaries and draw limitations, which is also very Cancerian. So key 7, or this Chariot card, is the reward for the magician's mental efforts. The tarot conception of will is different from ordinary notions because the tarot looks upon will as being in no sense a personal faculty. Will is not something that strong-minded people possess and timid people are devoid of. Like, we always seem to think that will is equal with backbone or a strong personality, but it's a living, motivating power behind the entire universe. This entire universe is intended. It is willed into being, right? We have to understand that. It didn't just, happen chaotically, right? It is a thing of order, a thing of will, a thing of intention. And so every living being in the universe has an equal share in this intention, in this desire. So every single one of us was intended and desired. That's how important you are, right? So the difference between people is not in the degree of willpower, as in how much willpower they have. It is the degree of your ability to express that willpower through your personalities. This is why the Chariot card. So let's dive into the symbolism. So the meaning of the Hebrew letter Chet, or CH, is field or fence, and we're going to see that on the last card again as well. So there is a very small fence somewhere down here on the card. It's like really teeny tiny, but it's right there, so you can barely see it. But both these meanings imply enclosure, right? So the field is the personality. The master or cultivator of this field of personality is the true I am or inner self. And this implies that the personality can be cultivated, and as such, its value to man is that it is the instrument of his spiritual progress. You guys still with me? Okay. Speech is a function of this key in the sense of enclosing a thought with words, building a fence around it. The yellow background shows thought, which precedes speech. Then you see a lot of connections to the High Priestess key through, for example, the water, which represents that blue stream of consciousness, sensitivity, emotions, feelings, right, running right behind him. Then you notice the Empress key. It's sitting, the chariot is sitting in a field of love, right, in a green field of love. So it's bringing in a lot of feminine energy into this card, more than you'd expect. So it's actually very balanced with a masculine and feminine, which is also another point of this card, is that it shows polarities, right? So the balancing of the polarities, which you also see in the two horses, right? So things that you like, for example, would be associated with the white sphinx, and things that you don't like with the black sphinx. And this is how you move through life. This is how you direct your mind, so to speak. I feel good about this, but I don't feel good about that. So when the mind is turned to the higher self, it knows what it wants. Otherwise, it just chases whatever comes along. And that's what most of us are doing, is just chasing whatever comes along. Remember in the Lovers card, we were talking about how the masculine is facing the feminine, which is facing the higher self, right? So your conscious mind facing your subconscious mind, which directs itself according to the higher self, if you keep things clear, right? And that's when you know what you really want. And it's not, Aleister Crowley said a famous sentence that a lot of people have taken out of context. That sentence of "do as thou wilt" is the entire law, right? But it wasn't your ego personality will, it's your deeper will, like the will of your soul, right? And then once you do that will, you will always be in alignment with the will of the universe, because this is a piece of that will of the universe that is a part of your will, right? This is why don't be afraid of your deep desires. If you were 5 and you always wanted to be a surgeon, maybe that's what you should be doing. That's what you should be studying, right? This is also showing you where you belong in this great organization of things of the universe, is by your deep will. But will is also a driving force, so that's understood. So the charioteer's belt indicates time, right? Because so you'll see the zodiac on this. The scepter in his hand combines a lunar crescent with a solar figure 8. So that's a dominion that results from a blend of powers. He is blending solar and lunar forces. So the solar is external and lunar is internal abilities. And this card has a lot to do with blending all these dualities, right? So the Grail Cup denotes his function of receptivity and using his will in the gift of transmutation. The charioteer's body is in the cube that represents the physical universe. His head is in the upper, in the cosmos, where it belongs, so in the spiritual. And his canopy of stars indicates the presence of the High Priestess. The 4 pillars, each ringed with one spirit in the form of the 4 elements of fire, air, earth, and water. His crown has 3 golden pentagrams signifying mental dominion. Under his crown is a wreath of green leaves. It symbolizes the fact that the green leaves of plants actually do bind sunlight, just as they bind his hair. They constitute one of the most important life forms in which life power is available for your use. The chariot wheels are orange, showing solar energy, which causes a revolving motion. And that being said, the chariot is also representative of one of the 7 hermetic principles of the universe, which is the law of motion, that everything is constantly moving. Everything is vibrating at a certain frequency, right? Everything is moving, everything is shifting, everything is constantly changing. And this is a part of life, right? So there is that saying, which is very true, that the only constant is change, and this is probably what that chariot represents. So the 8 folds of his skirt represent dominion over terrestrial forces. And the city, what's really important is that he has left the city behind him and crossed over the river. So the city would represent like found stiff beliefs, right? So calcified beliefs and the people that serve them, right? So he's left all that behind and he's moving into his own beliefs, his own ideas, his own way of seeing things and going and testing it out. So with the Chariot, you also learn to discriminate between reaction and motivation, right? Because it's not about getting rid of your desire, because that's what's pulling you through life, you know? So you can't get rid of that, but you have to look at your desire and see what's going on. And when you understand what's going on, then it can lead you in the right direction, right? You can work with it to bring you where you need to be. So the Bhagavad Gita, I find, has the most, in Hinduism, they have the most, let me switch this again, back to autofocus, there we go. It has the most comprehensive, probably, explanation, I find, around the Chariot. And it explains how the Chariot is representative of the human vehicle of consciousness. So when we look at a chariot, and I don't have one that shows it properly the way it's shown in the Indian version, but it shows usually a vehicle such as this one, right? But it has two people, right? So one sitting in the chariot and one sitting in front of the chariot holding the reins for the horses. So the Bhagavad Gita states that basically the chariot itself is the body, right? Your human body, and it's brought to where it needs to be by the mind. And the mind controls thought and emotion, right? So you have to harness and control your thoughts and your emotions for them to bring your body to where they're meant to be. And the mind is expressed on the outer through the ego personality, which is the coachman, but the higher self is sitting inside the coach, so behind this coachman here, or if you want to see it, in front of this coachman here, right? And this is the coachman is telling the mind where to go. So the higher self is dictating to the ego, to the personality, to the mind, to control the thoughts and emotions, to bring the entire carriage to where it needs to be through life. So what happens in our lives and where the entire confusion comes in is because the charioteer and the self in the chariot, they keep arguing back and forth. Like the self, the soul says, go here, move all the way across the country because you're going to find work in California, or you're going to be a big time actress. And the ego mind personality goes, I don't know how I'm going to do that. You need to explain that exactly to me, otherwise I'm not going to move. But the charioteer, you got to see this soul as being like you getting into a taxi cab, you know, and the taxi driver arguing with you about where to go. And you're like, what the actual hell? You're in the wrong job. So it's that's what we're doing with ourselves this entire time. It's like, if I don't see, and if I don't control, and if I don't know, and if I don't understand, then I'm not going to do, right? And so the soul is like, you've got to trust me. You've got to have trust, faith, and belief that I'm going to bring you somewhere that's going to be beneficial for us both, because it's in my interest that you do well so I can have this experience, right? So I can enjoy this experience, or I can learn from this experience, right? So we've got to move a little bit more into trust, but that is learning about your mind and how it functions and it works, because you've got to learn to discern between the voice of fear, which is limiting you and holding you back, and the voice of your intuition, which is guiding you. Right? So this chariot is representative of the human structure and how we're supposed to work together with our higher self, with higher divine forces, to bring ourselves to where it is that we're supposed to be. And we won't always immediately understand that, right? Because this aspect of our consciousness is only in charge, let's say, of harnessing and controlling thoughts and emotions, right? So that's what we've been hired to do, right? And we bring our chariots into places where our souls, the deep inner selves, can have experiences which are beneficial to their development, growth, and so on. So this is also a card that is associated with the number 7, and the number 7 has a lot to do with retreating, pulling yourself back, meditation, connecting with sorry guys, I live right right in yeah, so connecting with what was I saying? So 7 has to do with connecting with meditating, right? Retreating, pulling back, finding your deep inner voice and finding a space to listen to that. And it has to do with mysticism, they say, right? So connecting with exactly what this is saying, with the cosmic forces, and allowing yourself to be led by those, right? It's actually a very quiet number, and it's philosophical and metaphysical, and people that are associated with the 7, they're often very sensitive and physically very sensitive as well, and they're quiet, intuitive, analytical, inspired, philosophical, and mystical. So well, let's see. Yeah, there are some more symbols on this card I didn't get into, but it's okay. Then we're moving on to the Crowley. The Crowley is again really interesting, so we're going to spend some time with this one, just a little bit of time. And the Crowley card, it says here, it stands for the principle of change, movement, and the cycles of moving and stillness, moving and stillness, moving and stillness, right? So this also stands for, what do you call it? For creating something and the consequences. It stands for consequences. So what you put out there is what you get back, right? And this is the initiation of change. The initiation of movement, right, is represented by the Chariot. So let's go through the symbols here. 1 second. So the charioteer is holding the wheel of fortune in his hands. So this is indicating that we have control over our fortunes. We have, by way of our decisions and what we choose to follow. We can bring ourselves to positivity and abundance, or we bring ourselves into negativity, fear, loss, so on and so forth. So it all based on our decisions, which are based on our levels of awareness, our levels of consciousness, what we understand about our own selves, and how we function in alignment with our inner forces and the higher cosmic forces as well. So, and then the four animals are representative of the base forces of all of our changes. So that would be Taurus, of course, so materializing things. 1 second. Taurus would be over here. So let me see. There we go. So this would be the materialization of our ideas, right? And then right next to it, you'd see a lion. No, on the other side, you'll see a lion. And that is asking for creativity. And then we'll see an Aquarius, or a human being. Sorry. Which would be right here. And that would be asking that we take risks and that we just, move into things, that we're creative with things, that we're open to things, that we try to change things, that we're visionaries, right? And we follow our visions. And then, of course, the Scorpio or Eagle, which means that we're following our hearts and that which has purpose for us, but also that we stay loyal to it. So we make a decision and we pull it through. We go through with it, right? So we don't stop halfway and not finish things and start things over. So this is about, okay, we have an idea and we're going to bring that into the reality, into the real world. We're going to manifest it. So we'll need creativity, we'll need to be visionary, and we're going to have to stick it through, right, for it to manifest. So that's what the 4 qualities that are needed for efficient change to happen, right? So then There is our emotional being that's brought into this with the blue baldachin here, and our life force, the chi, which is the whiteness behind. Then the noticeable changes, which are represented by these four, and the motivating power of intuition is the driving force behind this whole vehicle. So this card is a good, it's associated of course with the number 7s in the deck, and the 7s in the deck are the challenges that the in the minor arcana are the challenges that we encounter trying to enforce our will, right? So the 7 of Swords would be fruitlessness, basically. It would be trying in the Crowley deck. It's representative of trying things for nothing that lead to nothing, right? So trying and trying and trying and trying, and eventually getting to the point of having to try to sneak around maybe, or something like that, you know, try to find routes that are kind of like back doorways because nothing else works. So lowering our standards, lowering our integrity, right, is the result of that. Then 7 of Cups would be debauchery, right? So completely losing our way and getting stuck and swamped in things that have nothing to do with what we're trying to go for, actually, and which are not just diverting us, but completely sucking us under. So this is like rotting from the inside out. This is what I call debauchery. Then there's the 7 of Pentacles, which is the fear of losing fear of not having any success, fear of being unsuccessful. But the one card that is a saving grace is the 7 of Wands, which is courage, right? Courage to stand up in front of amazing odds, courage to still go with your truth, go with your own way, push your way through. So these 7s tie in. And so the 7 of Swords, once again, is losing your integrity. The 7 of Cups is getting swamped, getting stuck, getting mired, getting bogged down, getting, you know, distracted. Then the 7 of Pentacles is failure, right? Complete failure. And the 7 of Wands, though, is courage. So that's fighting your way through. So this card is connected to the Tower as well. So the Tower is like this 16-7. So this is everything you've built up from when you started with the Chariot, right? You've made a decision, this is what's going to happen. And you've built it up and you've gone through all the other stages. And then in the Tower, everything crumbles. This is a natural cycle of things, right? So in a way, this is an assurance, if you understand the cards and how they interplay, that most of what you're going through is fine. It's perfectly fine. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It's a natural cycle. It's a natural evolution. It's a natural process. It's a natural next step in the expression of creation, right? So don't buy into what people tell you, or what, you know, marketing gurus have been telling you, and that success is just a straight arrow from bottom to top with no failures in between, and that you're a failure if you don't make your goals, and you have to realign, and you have to, you know, no, it's okay. It's okay. It's a natural process. So the tarot and understanding the tarot has really helped me as well to understand consciousness, right? To understand how I materialize things, how I manifest things, how I create things, and the natural steps and levels that something that is growing and developing has to go through in order to materialize in our world, right? And end up in the universe card as being fully materialized and here. You know, there's a lot that happens on that way, and thankfully people have been observing this and been able to put it together for us, right? So the 4 7s tie in with this and the Tower card. So affirmations that you can use, for example, if you do daily card pulls and you happen to pull the 7 of the Chariot, it usually is also indicating a 7-year or 7-month cycle of change, right? So this is inspiring you to bring the changes in your life that you need to make happen, and you make it happen. You decide you're going to consciously use your willpower in order to make the changes, because sometimes when we allow life to make the changes, you know, life can get a little tough, right? So if we decide we're going to give this up on our own, life usually rewards courage, right? So life rewards all the virtues that people talk about also in the tarot, and courage is one of those virtues that life rewards. So if you have the courage to step out there and make the necessary changes in your life that you need to make, life will reward you. If you wait for life to come and do things for you, but then again, this card is teaching you about the cycles of action and stillness, so movement and stillness, of receptivity and giving, so all of this, right? So there are cycles that you have to be observant about, but if you're the one that initiates this needed change, right, needed change, then the universe and life will reward you. So this is indicating, when you pull a card like this, that it's initiating a 7-month or a 7-year cycle of willful change. You're going to feel inspired to change something about yourself, your life, your experience in this dimension. And affirmations that you can work with are: I stimulate and motivate others in a positive way. I'm responsible for that which I create. I reach all my goals effortlessly and happily. And I enjoy the connection of between peacefulness or silence or quietness with activity. Okay, so that is that. So another aspect that I want to talk about with the Chariot card is coming in with the Voodoo Tarot, the New Orleans Voodoo Tarot. So this is a really interesting card. It gives a whole other aspect to it, which I really wanted to touch base on. So we see here the dance, and the dance is showing like this typical possession ceremony that everybody's heard so much about in voodoo. And we see the spirit here coming down on its rider and taking possession of it, and coming down on its dancer, sorry, and the spirit being a rider taking the possession of this vehicle, right? So in a possession, what happens? Your spirit moves aside, right? And your body becomes a vehicle for another spirit that then is in there for a time. And if this is a positive, higher consciousness level spirit, this can be a great blessing to you for obvious reasons, right? So this is what they attempt in these dances, is to bring that inspiration, that energy, that knowledge, that wisdom of these higher consciousness beings into our realm. So the aspect depicted here is a dancer dancing in sacred movement. And the Loa, or the higher being, is depicted as a pure being of light, while the Hunzi is shown carrying the weight and thus the possibilities of matter. So a spirit bends to embrace matter, and matter returns the favor in kind. Transcendence of a situation through ecstatic physical action, triumph, victory, constructive or destructive adherence to set forms of action. So basically what I wanted to show was this card is how the spirit takes form, how the spirit takes form, how it can take control of your life, and how if you allow that, it can move you, right? So the spirit moves form. Spirit moves form. My gosh, I'm sorry I'm stumbling through here, right? But spirit moves form, and I find that it is so aptly and accurately portrayed here that I wanted to really show you guys. Okay? Okay, then let's see. One more. And the last one that we're going to look at is the Chariot here with the Wizard of Odd Tarot. Yay! And of course we're going to look at this rune down here. And this rune is called Urus, and it shows it's It's an aurochs rune, so it means aurochs, but the aurochs is a extinct ox. And it used to be apparently this really wild kind of ox, and it was a thing back in the day when it was still alive for Nordic youth to go and hunt the aurochs and bring back its horns, which they would then drink from and celebrate. But hunting an aurochs was a life endangering project, so it wasn't something easy. It was an initiation. So this is another indication that this is a card of initiation into self-decision, right? Doing things yourself, into manhood, into womanhood, into being self-guided, right? So you've gone through all the learning stages, and after this card, everything's on you. So everything, this is showing like the human consciousness stepping into the vehicle of personality, right? And through that making changes on the world. But it's, this vehicle is guided by your knowledge, by your connection, and the decisions that you make, right? So this is shown with this rune, which is in connection with this aurochs, which represents actually power. It represents ability. It represents this craft, this power, right? Having power, and that this power can be used to change things. This is why this is connected as well to the thunder god Thor. So let me look what's it used for in traditional rune magic. Urus, 1 second. Positive power, being able to make a decision, courage, physical health, being able to assert yourself. So this rune is used to heal, and it's also fire, associated with fire, even though it has an element of ice. It's a masculine energy rune, and it represents raw, unfiltered power. So Urus is always used to help heal in traditional rune magic. And there we have it, guys. That was the Chariot. So when the Chariot shows up in divination for you, you can look at the 7-year cycle or a 7-month cycle. It's indicating something with 7. It's also indicating stepping into your own power, making your own decisions, taking charge of your life, taking charge of the changes that are going to happen in your life, making a decision to change something in your life, being called up on to take control, right? To take the reins into your hand. But the reins are not just of the situation that you're in, but what's up here, what's contributing in your heart and mind to the situation, what's your consciousness bringing to the situation, taking the reins of that, right? And making conscious decisions to bring effective change, okay? So that's the Chariot for you. I hope that made sense. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to check the box below, guys, and sign up to support this channel. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.